The publishing world has evolved a lot through the years, but the part that is really important is the editor, is the person that is assigned to you and your work. It should be sort of a mentor. It should be somebody that not only gives you the tools to get better, but listens to what you need. Those writers that are right on the fringe of society, it helps us create a culture that is based in what we feel about life and what life means to us. Those people are worth publishing. If you have those two elements in which you trust what you want to say and you find your own voice, then you do have something to say. What writing does to you, it gives you a sense of freedom to feel whatever it comes to you. Writing to me is the outlet that allows me to understand myself. I take all inhibitions out. I don't care what people think, and I don't write for anybody. I don't care if somebody's going to read it. This has to be said, because if not, I can't go to sleep. It's knocked in my head, and I had to put it in a piece of paper.
Welcome to Angel City Culture Quest, where art, social justice, and the environment meet in Los Angeles. I am your host, Melina Paris, and I welcome you to this episode. Hello, folks, and welcome to Angel City Culture Quest. Today, we are here with artist and writer Jorge Schneider in a discussion encompassing the publishing scene for new writers, censorship, small press, and his recent novel, El Año que me fui, or The Year I Went Away. Jorge was born in 1964 in Buenos Aires, Argentina. He earned a Bachelor of Arts in Physical Education at National Institute of Physical Education in Buenos Aires. Jorge is the author of La Sombra de la Langosta, La Grieta, Lucas, An Adventure, and El Año que me fui, which came out just earlier this year. Hello, Jorge.
Hi, Melina. I'm really happy to be here with you. It's a complicated morning, but really good with the hurricane and all that. So.
Yeah, today we're talking to you from a so-called hurricane in Southern California. So we're going to hope for the best with power, but I think we're good. We're going to jump right in. So to start with a provocative trend that you mentioned on the publishing scene for new writers, what have you seen happening with publishing house acquisitions?
As you know, the publishing world has evolved a lot through the years. Back in the 70s, 80s, we used to have a lot of small presses that were independent. That's not the case anymore. So the big presses buy the small ones, and then that takes away the chance for new writers to present their work to the world. You basically have no people that are willing to publish what you're doing. And then the second aspect of this, and this is the most troublesome to me, is that the publishing houses are not trendsetters anymore, but followers of a social discourse that might be the one that is ringing the loudest through society today. It's not about singling out certain groups, but as the social discourse moves in one way towards more rights and LGBTQ, as the world moves forward, sometimes the publishing houses cling to those trends to find authors that actually can write and cater to those groups in order to make money. Now, by doing so, what happens is that you have a lot of literary works based on the human condition, based on the experience that we all live in planet Earth, and they don't have the outlet to actually put those books out because people don't want to read that nowadays. They're more concerned about what's the social topic of the day. Literary works used to be at the vanguard of what was going to happen.
Exactly. It was more all-encompassing. Listening to you say that, it's almost like there's blinders on. And I understand what you're saying. How did you discover this issue? Can you provide any context on that?
I can give you an idea of the two countries that I've been published on. One is Argentina and the other one is United States. What happens is that when you go and knock on doors of literary agents, most of the times they tell you, what's the market? Who's the crowd? Who's going to read this? They would ask you about the quality of the work. They ask you about whether it's going to sell or not, which I understand because we live in a society that actually makes goods in order to sell goods and make money. But it sort of brings back what Oscar Wilde used to say, that people know the price of everything, but they don't know the value of anything. And when we do literary works, those who write trying to understand what it is to be human and what it is, this experience that we call life, we do it following a philosophical path, so to speak. We're trying to understand our realities and how we can recreate that reality. Whereas the literary works that they only aim to what people want to read is you're catering to a group and not writing what you want to say. So whenever I was lucky enough to get through that, which is almost unsurmountable, was because there was an editor that was willing to read my work before telling me what they wanted to publish. And then they said, oh, this might have some value. This deserves to be heard. And that's how I got the breaks that I got. But it was never following the traditional way of getting published, which is getting an agent, because the agent wants basically what sells, which I understand. But by doing so, you take away a lot of people that are excellent writers and they can't find any outlets. So what I did was go and talk to some writers and publishers in small presses and try to get my work in front of them and then try to see the response. So you have to really be on their faces. You can't just write a letter and hope that somebody will pick it up and say, oh, this has some value. That being said, if you're writing for something that you think has a massive audience, that's a different story. But if you're writing something that is more of an experimental work of literature, that's more complicated.
Well, we are living in really volatile times. And just for the sake of discussion, to push back a little bit, I'd argue that it's necessary to highlight marginalized groups. Society has not heard from these voices at large, and that leaves these communities starved of a comprehensive exposure to their own stories.
Yes.
And now we have book bans, which target authors of color and LGBTQ plus authors. And of course, in the aftermath of the murder of George Floyd, we saw how publishing and other creative industries suddenly included many Black authors and subsequently other marginalized voices such as LGBTQ+, Asian, and others. I dove into some research. The Advertising Council, it's a nonprofit organization that produces public service announcements. They were reporting being socially responsible was the number one brand priority for Americans. And as a result, consumers want to see evidence that brands are creating real change for America. 62% of U.S. consumers care about the impact of social justice issues. So that is the world we're living in. But to bridge to your first point, publishing houses and other industries also in recent years have employed diversity and equity and inclusion, or DEI policies. And further, the use of sensitivity readers has exploded, according to an article by The Guardian, which came out in March. That's a little troublesome because diving into this article, it explained that the use of DEI policies and sensitivity readers is more about hiring freelance workers, i.e. sensitivity readers, to help the publishing houses reach the bottom line. A sensitivity reader is someone often hired by a publishing house who reads a literary work looking for perceived offensive content, stereotypes, and bias, creating a report for an author or a publisher with suggested changes. And taking that to a higher level, you have what is called expurgation, which is also known as, here's a fun word, boldlerization.
Yeah.
Which is a form of censorship that involves purging anything deemed noxious or offensive from an artistic work or other type of writing or media. So that said, it sounds like the sensitivity readers, in large part, they're hired as freelance workers. They're not part of the publishing house. So the publishing house isn't making a major investment in hiring these people and honoring their opinions and getting their background and the benefit of their education and bringing that into the publishing house to therefore put out in society what they apparently on the surface are striving to do to make things censored and nice and clean. But that does not help anybody. So we come back around to your original point. They're not being vanguards anymore.
Yeah. What I would like to say about that is when you add any kind of censorship in whatever name you put to the censorship, we know through the ages, all the different political regimes in different parts of the world, they have some kind of censors. They call it moral police. They call it sensitivity readings. What happens is if you make everything antiseptic, then there's never going to be a true change in the world to be better because nobody's doing it for the right reason. See, people, in this case, as you said, people of color, which they should be there anyway. We shouldn't even have to think of them. I mean, a writer should be just a writer, whether he's Argentinian or he comes from South Africa or from China or from the United States or Canada, Brazil. He should be a writer because we're talking about something that is common to all, which is the mind. The mind of a person is a thought process. It's not an ethnic group. Of course, you are constructed by the way you live your reality, but we should never publish things based on that. We should publish things based on ideas. And those ideas, if we go back to the history of literature, Most of the most celebrated works have been thought-provoking. Uncle Tom's Cabin, The Scarlet Letter. Those works today will never be published because they will be too controversial. And we like this idea that we live in a society in which we have solved all the problems by having quotas for what to say and who says those things. And that can be farther from the truth because we're actually becoming afraid of really knowing what people think. And that's when literature was so important and the publishing world was so important. I always remember Salman Rushdie, who said, if I don't have the power to say something that offends you, I don't have any freedom of speech. And then, people can say, well, but that's not really freedom of speech. But it is, because then you had the counterpart of Voltaire, who said, I would die for your right to say whatever I don't agree with. And I guess we're losing that in this new publishing paradigm in which we had to please everybody and appease everybody too.
Yes, it's very difficult. You mentioned before authors like Steinbeck, Bukowski would not be published today.
Never. When you read what Steinbeck did with all the farm workers, he almost gave a voice to farm workers through literature. That would never be published today. Bukowski, oh my God, no.
No.
Yeah. So it requires to be brave from the publishing world and from the readers too. The readers had to read something that makes them uncomfortable sometimes because you had to question your comfort zone. I mean, that's what art is, basically. Art is, like Kafka used to say, it's an axe that cuts you in half and you got to put yourself back together. It's not something that you say, oh, that's really pretty. Oh, this is a fun poem. No.
Makes you think at the very least. Yes.
Yeah.
I like that. You have to be brave. Just as an added little note, the LGBTQ plus books are surging right now across the U.S. in the categories of children's and young adults. In 2021, sales of LGBTQ fiction reached 5 million units, doubling 2020 sales, and strong growth has continued in 2022, with LGBTQ fiction sales up by 39% from January through May. This comes even as efforts to ban these books or these LGBTQ authors, as well as books by people of color at public schools and libraries, proliferate nationwide. So people want this information. This is clear, but they don't want the sanitized version of it, which is apparently happening, at least in some places.
As you know, Melina, what happens is when somebody fights a topic too much, whenever something is controversial, people go and say, I want to see this. Many of us remember, or at least we have read about burning books or censorship. And the book is not really the main point. It's not the focus. The book is stepping stone to then ban everything else.
Right.
That's the way everything starts. Now, that being said, I don't think books should be mandatory readings at school. It should be, whoever wants to read something, got to read it too. We have to see the society we live in and the different ideas of what people think the children should be raised on. The family is really important for each kid too. But the worst thing you can do is actually attack those writers because basically you're telling them that what they're doing is not something that is worth reading. And everybody has something to say and they have their own voice. And I think every person is worth listening to, even if you don't agree. But at least listen to the person because they have a voice and they have something to say.
Yeah, we really need to learn that skill. So this is interesting to discuss. And I'd like to hear back from people about this as well and their thoughts. But for the sake of this episode, let's move on to the publishing scene for new writers. What would your advice be for new young writers?
As we were talking, I think that you have to write what you feel and not write what you think is going to sell. The first person you have to be truthful to you is yourself. Because if you choose writing, most likely you'll fail or you're not going to make a lot of money. So you really have to be happy. Happy is the wrong word too. You need to have the sense of well-being that what you did can live up to your expectations, even though most likely it won't. But at least you got to feel that you're doing something that is true to who you are and that is something that can forward as honest as you can write it. And then you have to put it out there, give it to some people to read. Don't take everybody too seriously because, a lot of times people have their own ideas of what they read. And they might not be the same ideas that you have when you wrote the book. But a book can have zillions of different meanings for different people. The main thing that you can get from readers is that they tell you that the book is engaging. And then the other thing I would tell to new writers, and this worked for me, but I might be wrong. I always say that. I don't hold the truth, is that you have to write something that you know something about. I met so many writers that want to encompass so many things, and they end up quoting things from the right, from the left, from the center, from above, from below, and they put it in their books, and then it's like a puzzle, but it's not their voice. So I think if you have those two elements in which you trust what you want to say and you find your own voice, then you do have something to say. Those are the two most important things. And then later down the road, then you worry about getting published. First, you gotta find your voice and say something that brings to you and brings to people, even again, if they find a different meaning of what you intended to write about, which happens. If you give it to people and they read it, if they are engaged by the novel, that's good enough, because you never know if they're going to understand what you wrote. And maybe you wrote something that you thought you said very clearly, but they understood something different. Life is like a broken phone sometimes. We'll repeat these things, but the sentence keep changing. Yeah. The book is like that too. Sometimes I meet people that we saw the same movie or we saw the same painting or we read the same book and we both understood something completely different.
It's human nature. Yeah.
Yeah. And you got to embrace it. You don't have to fight it.
I like that. Thank you. So how many years have you been writing, Jorge?
Well, I've been writing all my life since I was a little kid. My grandma, I guess almost everybody gets raised in a big part by their grandparents, right? My grandma, she introduced me to all Greek mythology and Roman literature. So I was exposed from an early age to what I call like this endless library. Wherever I went into that house, there was a book. Whatever throw it up, and there was a book. Whenever I saw on there, a newspaper, there was a book. So I started reading. And then when you read and you're a kid, and remember, I was born in 1964. So in 1964, we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have iPads, we didn't have anything, right? So it was basically music, listen to records, or you read. And if you read a lot, what happens? For a lot of people, you start writing because you say, well, I'm reading all these stories, but I want to tell my story. So I've been writing since I was like 9 years old.
Wow.
Little silly stories, poems, or even descriptions, or even sometimes I used to read a book and write my own literary critic, which probably was really bad, but, it meant something to me.
Yeah, that's important. And to have that opportunity, to have the space and the time and the opportunity to do that, that's wonderful.
And time we had, remember, back then, we had time, because it wasn't everything too fast. And you didn't have the virtual reality. So our life was centered in our physical world. So after you went to school, you had the afternoon for you. You don't have to go read emails or talk to a friend in WhatsApp or, do a TikTok. I mean, that didn't exist.
There was not all that distraction.
Yeah.
So fast forward, did you know initially that you wanted to publish with a small independent press with The Year I Went Away?
Yes. Because my last book was published in Argentina. There was like a big imprint. It's called Grupo Editor Latinoamericano, which is Latin American Publishing House. That's the name will be in English. It was so convoluted, the whole process, because when it's big, you never talk to the same person all the time. You talk maybe to your editor, but you can't reach the publisher. So even though the book was good and the first edition was sold out and I was really happy, I never felt that I had that connection to feel part of that imprint or that publishing house. I was just minuscule then. Now, what happened was that also I'm living in the United States. I've been living here for 33 years. So actually, I came here when I was 26. So in 1990s, I've spent most of my life here in the U.S., even though I keep my accent, which I like it. But not being in Argentina was kind of detrimental to getting to know more my publishing house, just because I wasn't there. And I couldn't do a lot of things that they wanted me to do because my life was here. So I can't just take off and do a book signing tour of 7 months. I need to eat, and publishing doesn't pay that much. Yeah. So here I met a group of very interesting writers from Long Beach and Oakland, Stephen Bramble, one of them. And they all wanted to have an impact as a publishing house. And I really loved the whole idea because we wanted to get all together and have this publishing house that publishes authors by merit and by what they had to say. And they were looking for thought-provoking works. They weren't concerned about if I was going to accept somebody or if my book was going to sell. And they were so kind to me that they published the book first in Spanish. And now in November, December is coming the edition in English. That was the first time that happened in the United States. So,
yeah, thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, it's going to come out again.
Yeah, this time in English.
Yes, yeah. English.
And it might be better than the one in Spanish because, with the translations, the books get better. I think what happened was the intimacy that we have. I would pick up the phone or write an email or show up and announce, and I would talk to the publisher and they would listen to me. Now in the translation, we're working over the translator and the publisher and me. I'm not kind of outside and hoping that the translation comes okay. Every language has its own idiosyncrasies. So sometimes a metaphor in Spanish won't ring that well in English and vice versa. So that's why you need also a translator who is a writer, not just a translator, because you need to translate the meaning of the book. So that's what convinced me to go that route with small publishing houses.
Well, you led right into my next question, which is what drew you to ZQ287. But to also highlight, could you please briefly explain what the traditional role of a publishing house is as far as working with authors?
Yeah, the first and foremost is to give you a voice that people will read by putting the book out. But the part that is really important in a publishing house is the editor, is the person that is assigned to you and your work. And you want that person, at least for me, a person that is open. If they do some editing change and you say, look, maybe you're misunderstanding what I'm trying to say in Spanish, that they're open to see the way the language works and trying to accommodate it in the final draft. I know an editor that basically says, okay, give me the manuscript, come back in 3 weeks, I give you the proofs, and then we edit and publish. That's not the way it works. So basically, the publishing house, it should be sort of a mentor too. It should be somebody that, as a mentor, not only gives you the tools to get better, but listens to what you need to get better.
And goes through the process with the writer.
Yeah, and listens to you, because a lot of times they go through the process, but it's a one-way street. But when they actually get engaged with you and they say, okay, please explain this to me really well so I can really understand what you're trying to say. And not just by some grammar thing or some typos, of course, are going to be fixed. But, this paragraph is too long. No, but why is too long? What's the mood that somebody's jaded and weary and is going in a catharsis? Okay, that should be a long paragraph. Somebody is really jolted by something, it should be a small paragraph. I mean, that's the way we do emotions. For instance, in Blood Meridian goes through Texas and they're looking for this party. And he gives you this long paragraph that actually, when you're reading, you get so tired of reading it because they get so exhausted when they do what they're doing that you had to be exhausted. So that's what a good publishing does for you. They never alter the mood of the novel. They make it better, never take away, just for the sake of taking away.
Thank you for clarifying that. I wanted you to talk about that so people could have a good understanding of it. Now, ZQ287 is a small press that has offices in Long Beach and Oakland, and it describes itself as specializing in publishing its own blend of destructive nuance.
Yeah.
Now, I know that you are not ZQ287, but can you describe that a little bit? Could you elaborate on that?
They want to be disruptive. It goes back to the beginning of our talk. It goes back to, are we going to publish something that is going to be sanitized and it's going to be perfect for the reader and it's going to be happy and everything is going to be good in the world? Or we want to publish something that whoever wrote it, and we don't care wherever it comes from or what part of the world comes from, it's going to have an impact that's going to unsettle you, and it's going to kind of bother you, but then you have to read it again. Or you might agree with it, but something that actually points to a feeling or to an event or to a philosophy or something that might happen in the future or the past that makes you question the way you feel about all that. That's what ZQ287 wants to do. That's what I was sold with them because I like that. I was happy, hey, look, I can write whatever I feel like it.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And the other thing that you highlighted about ZQ287, the group of writers that got together, and about other comparisons to this idea in history. You mentioned Van Gogh and Monet and Renoir and Pissarro. Can you talk a little bit about what they did?
Yeah, when you go back in history and you look at all the artistic movements, you always see that painting, literature, and music, they're always kind of evolved together. And if you go back to that period of time, when you have Monet and Pissarro and Renoir and all those guys, they were never accepted by the traditional painting class in France. They couldn't get into the salons, nobody cared. So what did they do? They created their own salons because they believe in what they did. Now, if I take that and I extrapolate that to ZQ287, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to find those writers that are in the outskirts of society, right on the fringe, but they're valuable because the fringe does exist and they can bring something that makes sense to us, and it helps us create a culture that is based in what we feel about life and what life means to us. I mean, those people are worth publishing. So that's what I like. Those writers got agents and some of them got book deals from regular publishing houses, but there was always this thing that was kind of weighing heavily on their shoulder. is your book going to sell? Is your next book going to sell? Because as you know, if you write one book and it sells so-so, you're not going to get a second contract. So how are you going to foster that writer if every time he writes a book or she writes a book, you tell him, well, is it going to sell? You can really grow as a writer. Whereas ZQ287 in Long Beach and Oakland is more concerned about what you're writing next, and then we'll figure it out. And it's the only publishing house that I know of that are willing to do that. And that's why I think it's so important.
That's great to hear about. I had a little time to begin reading Stephen Bramble's book. He's the founder of ZQ287. I haven't finished it yet. I just barely got into it. It's called Affliction Included, and it's great. I thought that he really captures the sensitivity of humanity in an effective way, where the main character's emotional intelligence really moves the story forward. So that's an example of ZQ287.
Yeah, what you just said right there is perfect. He captures the emotional aspect of the character, and he moves the story forward. Nowadays, sometimes we see a story that moves the character forward. But it should be the other way around. Because in this theater of life, we are the actors. It's not the stage. It's the way we live our lives. It's not that just because I put a different costume on a different person. So if the story moves the character forward, that's flow literature for me. Now, if the character moves the story forward, now there is something for us all there.
Yeah. And that's what keeps you glued to it. That's what makes you turn those pages. If you're just tuning in, today we're speaking with artist and writer Jorge Schneider. Thank you for listening. Hi folks, this is your host, Melina Paris. Angel City Culture Quest is growing. We're barely into our third year now, and there's so much more quest-worthy inspiration to bring you. Art, books, film, coverage of local events, and more. We've gotten a new QR code so you can capture episodes on the go because I know you're busy. We've been creating artistic flyers unique to each episode and new Angel City Culture Quest stickers. And there's more to come. As you know, there are costs to keep this podcast going. So, if you're able, join me in this quest with your support. Think of it as a cultural tip jar to share any amount that you're comfortable with. Even a few dollars a month will contribute to my ability to continue bringing you the great work of these artists, activists, and others, and the cultural content that you want to hear about. I would be honored to have your support. To donate, please go to my Patreon link at patreon.com/Angel City Culture Quest. There you can also see all of our past episodes. Thank you. You've mentioned this as we've been talking, but could you discuss a little bit about your creative process when it comes to writing?
Yes. When it comes to writing, I don't have a formula. I hate formulas. I think that a lot of books, they tell you on the first 20 pages, this had to happen. Then in page 100 this, 120 this, and then you wrap it all up, which works great, I guess, for TV series. You want to do the same thing over and over and over and over again. Now, for me, what happens is that it all comes first with some kind of uneasy feeling that I feel within myself. Something that has to be said. Sometimes it's kind of the whole character that works within me, and I didn't even know that I have it inside. I think we all have a lot of different parts of ourselves inside. We just decide which ones to feed more. That's an old native saying that within your heart, you have a dog and a wolf. And you have to be really careful which one you feed, the wolf and the dog. You feed the dog because if you feed the wolf, then you're going to end up being not very good in life when it comes to other people. Yeah, now that being said, in my regular life, I feed the dog. I don't go out there doing all crazy things that I do in my books. But in my books, I let all the dogs out. I mean, sometimes I write and I say, I can't believe that I'm writing this. This is really bad, but it has to be put in the story. Sometimes I think people confuse a book with the author. I have people that always thought that I was kind of manic depressive, and I'm not.
You're not.
Yeah, I know. I was kind of a guy who, listened to Pink Floyd too many times and is down on the floor. I'm not, even though I love Pink Floyd. When it comes to the book, what happens to me is that I take all inhibitions out. I don't care what people think, and I don't write for anybody. I don't care if somebody's going to read it. This has to be said, because if not, I can't go to sleep. It's weird. I mean, it's knock in my head, and I had to put it in a piece of paper. Yep. And then as I have the beginning of the plot, then I let my characters just take me wherever they want to go. Sometimes I start with 2 characters and end up with 5. And the one that I thought was the most important is not the one that holds the key to the novel.
Right.
Because I think that when you let all this out, then you create something that, because it's beyond your control, is even more honest, because you're not censoring what comes from within you. So that's the way my writing works. Now, I'm not one of those guys that write 5 pages every day. I don't believe in that. I believe in saying something when you have something to say. Mark Twain used to say, if you don't know what to say, don't open your mouth, because you're going to look like an idiot. That was Mark Twain. So in writing, if you don't have anything to say, don't write. Just don't write it today, because you're going to say something that has no soul, no substance. And too many people do that. Too many people do writing exercises, but they forget the essence. So it's more important the essence and not the lines that you write per day. It's not more important how many books you have written in your life. The more important thing is the book that you have written. That is better than all the books that you could have written.
You called it's the thing that comes out of the story.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about The Year I Went Away, what it's about?
I'm going to give you just a brush stroke kind of an idea. I don't want to spoil the end. I mean, that would be terrible.
Right. Just a little smidgen.
First of all, it's what I call an inward novel. It explores what's happening within me. The character is projected into the world, and then you get a novel in which the world gets projected by the way we see it. The way I see the colors might not be the same one that you see. Van Gogh's tree was not Renoir's tree. They were painted differently because they saw it differently. So this book is about a guy. It happens in Buenos Aires, which I love Buenos Aires. Buenos Aires is kind of the divine comedy. It's just everything happened at the same time. The good, the bad, the ugly. It's just crazy. And people actually lend themselves to that. Argentinians, they don't exercise restraint. When they want to say something, they say it. They act upon it. It's really good for writing novels or writing an essay on sociology. It might be hard to get a society that is very well organized. So it's one of those things. But it's about this person that's coming out of a divorce. He has to move out of whatever the place he was living in. He's sick and tired and tired of the life that he lived before. He wants to leave all that behind. I'm not going to go into the details, but just get the idea. Yeah. Somebody who's weary and spent, a failed marriage, had to walk out. And he ends up in this house, in this house that he rents. He rents it because everything's awkward. It's rickety and it's decaying, but it's beautiful. And then the people that live in there, one is a tyrant painter, is this crazy guy, bigger than life. He's completely totalitarian. Then there's a woman who's so mysterious that you can't even get past her gaze. I mean, you think you know it and you can never know her, but she holds all the answers to whatever happens in the house. And then there's this guy that when he's in the house only sleeps, and when he's awake, he leaves the house. So they call him the dead because he's a corpse. When he's there, he's sleeping all the time. Then when you want to talk to him, he's not there. So as time progresses, the main character is Julio von Artens. He kind of gets lost in this labyrinth. They go to different parts of his psyche. What am I doing? He admires the art of this painter, but he's dressing like crap. And then this woman he's falling for her. But every time he falls for her, she seems more removed from him and yet very close, always at him, but like a mirage that you can never reach. And then this other person that everybody talks about, but he's the only one who can talk to because he's always sleeping. So he's wondering what kind of life this is. And as he starts getting into these relationships, he begins to dissolve himself. He kind of begins losing the sense of self. So that self that you have, that is you are this, it kind of starts dissolving and you become part of this house and you become a part of everything. Well, at the end, he's going to have to rearrange all the pieces. I won't tell you the ending, but it's a book in which you let the outside world go within you. You go so far inward that you don't exist anymore, as opposed to events that happen outside, they alter the way I feel. No, these are the people themselves. They get so much within his head that he suddenly starts questioning himself. What is he? What is he doing here? What kind of life does he want to live? Is this a house or is it a madhouse? That's why it's called The Year I Went Away, because he kind of went away from himself. That's what the book is about.
Thank you. Now, you had mentioned your favorite authors with your favorite books.
Yeah, this is a tricky question because I told you many times in a conversation that to choose 1, 2, 3 authors is complicated. But for the podcast's sake, I did it. And I'm going to mention 4 different ones from 4 different countries. One is Jorge Borges from Argentina, whom I consider probably the greatest writer of the 20th century, because he created what we call the World Wide Web in his mind before it even existed 100 years ago.
Wow.
He was so far ahead of everybody that he could grab every point and every event that happened in the world and put them all together, because he mostly wrote short stories. And he wrote the famous one, the Hexagonal Library, basically, which is the eternal, the endless library. It's the infinite library. It never ends. Whenever you go, there's another room with more books. And whenever you go, there's more books and more books and more books and more books. And that's the way he conceived the universe. What I love about that work is that he said that we, all the readers, go from room to room and we destroy everything because we're looking for the meaning of life, or what it is what it is that we are. And in the process, we destroy everything because there is no meaning. There is no, what is this? Basically, life is life and you are it. This is it. And if you don't see it, that's it. But they go over and they create wars. Now they got the Sumerians and then the Egyptians and then the Greek and then the Native Americans and then the Chinese and then the Americans. And they all kill each other. They're not looking for this mystery, what it is that we are doing in this life. And he says that every time history is that room in the library. And when all this is destroyed, we open another. And what is there? Another room.
Wow.
And there's a movie that captured that really well that is called Interstellar. That is based on Borges' Infinite Library. That's why it starts with a book that falls. That's my favorite Argentinian author.
Jorge Luis Borges, right?
Luis Borges, yeah. He's dead already. He died in the 80s. One person that I consider brilliant and to me one of the best writers when it comes to essays that I read is Susan Sontag. I think Susan Sontag has one of the best minds of the 20th century. She was never afraid of anything. She was so clear, so crystal clear in every single thing that she wrote that you didn't have to read a sentence twice. That's remarkable.
That's a very special skill there. Yeah.
And when it comes to fiction, she wrote to me a wonderful book. Susan Sontag was criticized for her fiction. But some people, they thought she was too on the intellectual side, which I like, but that's what she was because she lived her life like that. And I think it was actually really good.
That's okay. That's good.
Yeah, she wasn't being pedantic. I'm this intelligent person and I'm going to write something that is going to be hard for you to understand. Or the team, you're not going to like it. But there is a novel which is called The Volcano Lovers. And I find it remarkable because she takes the Vesuvius, in Naples, and she takes the whole history of Vesuvius. The volcano lives the same life than this couple. They go from this love that begins, and it's this kind of a fire that begins to consume it, and they fall in love, and then the volcano has the eruption, and then at the end everything starts dissipating, and then how everything ends in ashes. So that's one book that I really love from her. I think it's more of a sociological and actually, forget sociological, it's a treaty about life. That's what I love about it.
That's what it sounds like, yeah.
Yeah, it's a treaty about life. I mean, this is where your life is. You get all this strength and you're a kind of volcano, and then in your peak, you blow up and then you start kind of dissipating, and then there is, and then everything dries and there you are.
Back to the earth, yeah.
Now, the other one is a German guy, W.G. Sebald.
W.G. Sebald.
He wrote The Rings of Saturn. And I think that guy is really fantastic because you read one of his novels and you learn the whole history of Europe. See, Borges gives you that sense of something that is infinite. Susan Sontag gives you this idea of putting people and events that happen in the world and write the whole treaty of life. So it's bigger than the story itself. Then comes Sebald and The Rings of Saturn because he digresses a lot, but he never loses the thread of the novel. And yet you learn the whole history of Europe. It blows you away. You finish reading that guy and you can take a history test and you're fantastic. And you say, but I didn't read a history book.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah, so those are, to me, the writers that can go beyond what a novel is. And that's the biggest difference when it comes to writing. And then the one that I love, and I go back in time and we go to France now, which is Balzac. Balzac, I think, is fantastic because all his books were basically a comedy about what is being human. So you have The Miser, you have Cousin Bette, you have Lost Illusions about a young guy who wanted to be a writer. So Balzac is the answer to the 1001 Arabian Nights. It's fantastic. You read one of his books and suddenly you know every single person that lived in France at the time and whatever they have to do and go through. The reason that I choose these four people for today is that they haven't written the same, and yet they tell you the same story by using different tools. And every single one of them was admired by the other one. Of course, Balzac was admired by the other three because he's from centuries ago. But Borges, Sontag, and Sebald, they all admired each other. And you can see why. Sometimes when you read a writer, and this happens to me a lot, if you love what that writer says, all you have to do to find more books that you want to read is try to see who his favorite or her favorite writers were. And then you have the library of your dreams, because you get all these people that are just incredible, and you're going to see just the spark of each of these writers in the other's work. So those are my favorite ones.
I like that. The library of your dreams.
You know what's an incredible thing? We all do it in music. If you like Deep Purple, you went with Led Zeppelin, but we don't do it when it comes to books. I always say people ask me, oh, what should I read next? What are your writers that you like? Okay, now go see what writers they love, or the writers of the present that admire those guys. And then you just connect the dots and you just go find those books. And that's it. Yeah.
That's a good example. It's a natural progression.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, in your book, you had said before when we spoke that everything that we're discussing is related to your writing. Mm-hmm. In your book, The Year I Went Away, the characters are all part of you, you said. You comprehend different beings, and then you wonder, are they living in a different dimension? Are they living with you? Are they doppelgangers? You noted that you cannot understand all these different possibilities of existence when you cannot see a different perspective.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you to recall something if you can. When or how did you first become aware of and open up to new perspectives? And can you describe how you felt at that time?
Yeah, there are two things that happen in my life. The first one is something that might look, I don't want to say kind of a cliche, but it happened to me. My dad left when I was very little, just suddenly. One day, to say, I'm coming back, he never came back. And we were in a very good socioeconomic position, but he went away and he took everything with him. So we fell into hardship. I was like 8, 9 years old. I don't know if I understood that consciously or unconsciously, but suddenly I saw myself in somebody else's shoes that they were never mine. Now, I was 8, 9 years old back then. And what happened is, I don't know if it's something that we do in a conscious way or subconscious way, but it forced me to see things from the other side of what I was before. So before, I could do basically what I wanted to do. I wanted a soccer ball, I would buy a soccer ball. I wanted to get new shoes, I would get new shoes. Suddenly, from having no warning, I went to, I can't get new shoes. I can get a soccer ball. So it gave me a different perspective about life. Sometimes we always see from where we are. And by being little like that and being on the other side, it made me realize there are two faces or more to each side of the story.
Right.
Or sometimes it's even the edge. Now, later on in life, I saw a famous movie, the Dead Poets Society, which I think it has that great scene when Robin Williams tells Ethan Hawke to get up on the desk and have a different perspective. That kind of hit me. That made it actually more conscious. I don't even have to look at what I have, what I don't have. Also, I can rise above all that and see all different aspects of life from a different standpoint. So I go up on the desk, I remove from everything, and I say, okay, this person might need that one. That person doesn't want this one. That person is stealing that thing. This person is looking like crazy to learn from that other person who doesn't want to teach. Then it hit me in a sense that to be a writer, you have to remove yourself. And at the same time, to let all those things that in the movie were outside, but in real life are within me, to come out. Because if I was able to live life as a person who had something, and then as a person who didn't have something, then I could look at life through the eyes of somebody who committed a crime, or through the life of somebody who's a lawyer, or who went to war, or who is in the church, whatever. So it was basically get out of this preconception of what you have of yourself and allow all those manifestations of life to kind of spring forward from yourself. And that's something that Joseph Campbell used to say through me too. Everything is within ourselves. It's there. Everything is always there. And we are all that. We just have to recognize it. I guess there are certain events that make you do that. And that's how I recognize that if you want to say something, you have to look at it from every single perspective. You don't want to say something idiotic, right? You want to say something of value. You can have your own point of view, but then get yourself out of that point of view and see it from the other person's point of view. It will never be the same. It won't be exact because we don't know how people live. But at least you won't have the monopoly on how the people feel around the world. So you always have that sense of doubt and that sense of trying to question what you think, which I think all intelligent people doubt themselves before they act. Yeah. And all the stupid people, they act first and then they say, oh, I screw up. No, but try to doubt and try to think.
Always question. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how this whole thing happened. And then you start seeing all these things that come out of you that you don't know that you had, and you just give him a voice. And then, they surprise you. But the good and the bad, both.
The good and the bad. I can see how that would have had a profound impact on you to understand different perspectives at that young age. When your world changed. So that really is profound. Finally, can you tell me, Jorge, how has writing changed your life?
I don't think it changed my life. I think it made my life wholesome. I think that you get a sense of well-being because you don't censor yourself. I mean, I could have chosen to write music or to do ballet or I don't know, whatever arts, it could be in sculpture. I do painting. What writing does to you, it gives you a sense of freedom, but not the sense, not the overused freedom that we hear all the time. Everybody just talk about freedom so much, and now it's such a trite word that it doesn't ring good anymore. It gives you a true sense that you have the freedom to feel whatever it comes to you, and that's okay. You gotta make sense out of it. So it's like this big storm that throws all the debris at you. Well, then you just remove the debris and then you kind of keep whatever is good for you. Mm-hmm. But without having all those things within you, you just will be a one-dimensional person. And I can't think of any tragedy bigger than being a one-dimensional person. Yeah. So writing to me is the outlet that allowed me to understand myself. But if I never understand myself, you think you do, but the day after tomorrow you do something stupid and say, well, what did I do this? But at least I can deal with feeling that and I can put some sense of reason to my life. Now, Jung used to say that too. Jung used to say, if you let the subconscious guide your life and you don't know that it's doing it, you never know why you're doing the things you're doing. So writing allowed me to acknowledge that dark side that we all have, but not dark side because it's bad, just because we never turn the light on. That's what I'm saying. And understand that it's us. And so in that case, it made me a whole person. You can say it changed my mind, but it changed my mind. It would be something, to me, it would be like it's detached from me, and writing is part of me. It's intrinsically me.
It's your conscience, your subconscious, all of it. Yeah.
And all that battle that is there in between. Yeah.
The battle. Exactly.
But all battles are not bad. I remember that there's a Buddha story. I'm digressing, but it's okay. It's a Buddha story in which Buddha had this sticky hair. It's all sticky hair. And this person goes and says, I'm going to get Buddha and I'm going to actually kill him with my arrow because, I don't understand Buddha. I don't know what it is. It's making me kind of upset and frustrated and I can't go living my life. So he throws an arrow. The arrow gets stuck in the hair. And Buddha keeps walking and keeps walking. And finally he goes, that's the whole point. I don't have to fight him. I have to embrace him. If I throw all my anger gets gluing here and it gets getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger on my misunderstanding. And then that worries me more. So I just embrace that, which, the tradition of Buddha with selflessness, right? Selflessness is what it is. It's basically everything that's around becomes you, which is the way I write. So that's what you do. You don't fight it. Okay, come with me. And then you learn that it's your best friend. So that's what it is.
It's a flow.
Yeah.
Accepting and flowing. Yeah. Is there anything that you'd like to add that I did not ask you?
I guess what I could say is that, we talk a lot about writing, but not the importance of reading. And what I would like to say is that I don't know of any mental process that helps you understand and rationalize the world better than reading. When you read, you have to do it in a rational state of mind, and then you gotta make reason of the world around you. I think that we live in a society nowadays in which people don't read much, unfortunately. Years ago, I used to go to a coffee house and people would go with books and read. And were maybe 10 tables, 3 of them would have books and they were reading. Nowadays, I don't see that. I think we have become a society of images. We'll react to 20-second reel or 10-second reel because we can't even watch something for 2 minutes. And a book requires attention and requires undivided attention and requires curiosity. If you make everything short, then there is no curiosity, right? Because you don't want to scratch farther than where you are. So I think that for literature and for reading to survive, for writing to survive, we need readers. And that's the hardest find nowadays. So readers that want to read something that throws them off a little. So yeah, that was my 2 cents about this.
I was listening to another author and he said very much the same thing, but in terms of students in college with their graduate program. He said that they should be reading more than writing in their graduate program to absorb just everything that you just said, to your point, to inspire that curiosity and learn and find more within themselves and absorb more.
Yeah, because there is something about reading a book. I guess we all felt it. Sometimes you discover things about yourself that somebody said without knowing you. And then you go, wow. So we're kind of all related in this thought process. Oh, I'm not alone. You know how lucky you are when you realize that you're not alone, that somebody wrote something on a book that you feel. I mean, he wrote it 200 years ago or maybe last week.
It's amazing. And that's the same thing that happens in a song. You can have the same reaction to the music and a song and listening to somebody singing. Yeah. So, that's what art does.
Yeah, that's why we can't lose art.
You're right. We have to hang on to it. Thank you, Jorge. This has been a great discussion. Can you tell us where we can find you?
Actually, if you go to Amazon or you go to Barnes & Noble, you can order the book online or at the store. Anywhere books are sold. I mean, nowadays that people use the internet. And for those who don't speak Spanish, just a few more months and the one in English will be out. So that'll be fun. And we'll probably do a presentation most likely with the San Pedro Waterfront District in November. So I'll let you know all that.
The San Pedro Waterfront District will hold something for your novel's English debut.
Yeah.
I want to also let people know that you co-own Menduina Schneider Art Gallery in San Pedro, your wife, Alejandra.
And they're welcome every first Thursday of the month. We have the art walk in San Pedro, which is wonderful.
Yes.
And you've been to the gallery many times, and, we rotate all the artwork.
Wonderful works.
And we have a show first week of September by Piero Pascal, who's an artist from France, and he's coming and he's fantastic. So it's surrealism. So if they want to come see it, and we'll be there that Thursday between 5 and 9 o'clock at night. First Thursday of the month.
First Thursday, September 7th. Yes.
Yeah. And the book is there for sale too, because I do have some copies at the gallery too.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jorge. This has been a wonderful discussion. I appreciate you taking time.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for listening to me and all my ideas. I appreciate the time and the space. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and recommend on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.